really is wonderful to see your faces on my screen, and to at least be together virtually as a community. Thank you for making the time to spend this time with us, and thank you to the amazing mental health team at Heschel for planning this call with me. I'm going to turn it over to them very soon. I want to give you a little bit of a sense of what's been going on in terms of our planning. And actually, I just want to start with giving you a sense of what happened today, which probably different people have different views of. And by way of doing that, I want to say something that I've been thinking about a lot from this week's Parsha. So this week's Parsha is Parshat Ki Tisa. Its greatest hit, if you will, is the golden calf. And what I'd actually like to just reference for a minute comes before the golden calf. I've actually been thinking a lot about Parshat Ki Tisa because it starts with a census. And as many of you know, I'm a little census obsessed. And we have actually spent much of the year at Heschel planning to run a census, which, like many things, will now be delayed, but we will come back to it. But part of what I like about the beginning of Ki Tisa is it has a lot of kind of detailed narrative about things like the census that we often skip through on our way to the golden calf. And here's the thing that I was thinking about today as I watched all of the remote learning that went on. Remote learning that if you had told me 2 weeks ago we were going to be doing it, I would have told you that we were not headed there. And yet I watched today, I actually watched as a head of school and as a parent, as just amazing classrooms came to life on screen. So here's what God tells Moses in Parshat Ki Tisa. God says, "Ve'asita oto shemen mishchat kodesh, rokach mirkachat ma'aser rokeach, shemen mishkat kodesh yihiyeh." So this is in the context of the building of the Ohel Moed, the building of the holy meeting tent in the desert as the Jews are journeying. And God tells Moses that it starts with God saying, you have to take these spices, these very regular spices. And what I just read is the verse where God says, you're going to take these spices and you're going to make them into a sacred anointing oil. And shortly thereafter, the text says, God is still speaking to Moses, and God says, V'kidashta otam v'hayu kodesh kodashim, Kol hanogea bahem yikdash. And you will consecrate them, these spices, so that they are holy. Whatever touches them will be holy. As I've read the Parsha over the course of this week, thinking about everything that's going on, I've been very moved by this idea that things that start out as not at all holy can be made holy. And in fact, not only can they be made holy, but they can be imbued with the power to make other things holy. It's very much like Rabbi Heschel's idea that the road to the sacred leads through the secular. So, so we're not on this call tonight to say everything is great. I think we all know everything is not great. And that's why we're on this call, to talk about how to get through a really tough time. But I will say that watching what went on today made me think of those spices and made me think of the idea that the road to the sacred goes through the secular sometimes, that regular things at unusual moments of journeying, right? All of this anointing is going on a long journey, a long, hard, complicated journey. And when I watched our teachers and our students today, I have to say, I am not a big, I did not go into this week a lover of the Zoom meeting. I'm a people person. I like to meet in person. I like to have conversations sitting around a table, not on a computer. I love teaching students in classes. What went on today felt like our teachers managed to take those regular spices and make them a little bit holy. And I felt very grateful for that and for this idea that out of this very hard time, we're going to find ways to turn things that are normally every day into spaces and ideas and techniques of learning that will support our students and hopefully each other. So for me, that's what Parshat Ki Tisa can give us as we think about the upcoming days and potentially weeks. So thank you. Thank you to everybody who made today happen. I'm looking at many of you on our call, and really you all made today happen. These have been tough planning days, and I know they have been filled with what many of us like the least, which is uncertainty, or maybe that's an overprojection on my side. That's why I'm grateful to this mental health team. It is very hard to plan and live and parent and support each other in a time of both a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty. And really, we are able to do what we're doing because of the support of this remarkable community. We are committed to keeping you posted. For better and for worse, I'm being completely transparent about what we know and don't know. I think it is unlikely that we reopen next week, but we will make that decision on Sunday. And in the meantime, we will go about our learning. I encourage you to keep your children safe and yourselves safe through the methods of social distancing that are really best practices at this point, and to check with your own doctors and pediatricians about what they really think is necessary for your particular children, family, and circumstances. Our goal tonight is to think about some tools and conversations that we can have with each other and with our children to help support each other through this time. Here's how we're going to do it, because thankfully there are so many of us here. In a moment, I'm going to turn this over to Jerry Wishner and our entire mental health team. They're each going to say a little bit of sort of broad brush thinking and advice that we've been working through as we contemplate what lies ahead and what's going on right now. As they're talking, you are welcome to use your chat function at the bottom of your screen. Please send your chat to me. You should be able to find me there. And if you send your chat to me, I will be aggregating your questions, and I will then share them with the mental health team in what will hopefully be a productive way. We probably won't be able to get to everything tonight, but I promise you we will follow up. If there are questions that come up that require, us to share more, and it requires sources or something like that, we will be getting back to you. Our goal is to be your partners. We are all in this together. So before I turn it over with Jerry, I'll just leave you with the advice that I've been trying to give our teachers all day. These are uncharted waters. We will make mistakes. Our learning was not perfect today. It was just inspiring for its fearlessness and for everybody's commitment. We will make mistakes. There are always second chances. Be kind to yourselves. Know that we're all figuring this out together. Know that we have time to figure it out. And please know, most of all, that we are really here. Everybody at the Heschel School is here to support you, to journey with you through this unknown territory, and really to reopen on the other side, no doubt with vast treasure troves of perspective that I hope we will keep with us as we continue in person to educate our kids. So with that, I turn you over to Jerry, who will introduce the rest of the team. Please chat me anything that you're interested in thinking about.
Thank you, Ariella. Hi, everyone. Together with my colleagues, the Heschel Mental Health team of professionals, we're glad to be with you virtually tonight to talk about concerns during these unusual times. Unusual times is an understatement. The most familiar, stable, and reliable aspects of childhood and adolescence, attending school and interacting with peers, are suddenly very different and restricted at the moment. That may be very unsettling to some children as well as parents, and we see many different types of reactions that we'll be talking about shortly. We're also hearing many different questions and concerns and would like to help. As parents and educators, our children learn much watching how we confront our own fears and anxieties, whether we can model resilience, and how we adapt to the disruptions of our own familiar daily routines. By talking together tonight, we hope to make a contribution to your comfort level as we go through this together. You may not have previously met each member of the school's mental health team. You will tonight. Each school division has dedicated mental health professionals but we're also very much a team, supporting one another and always eager to work across divisions whenever needed. Tonight is one such opportunity for us. In a moment, we'll hear from each team member speaking about different issues important to us all across divisions. The overall concepts described tend to be universal. They're applicable to all ages, although their specific language or level of sophistication will vary to be developmentally appropriate for your child. The underlying goal of enabling children and parents to feel safe, confident, and resilient during uncertain times is primary for all of us. Another word about logistics. At the end of the evening, we're going to post references that we hope you'll find useful. Following this evening, feel free to reach out to any one of us through email. If you initiate contact through email, we'll then determine the best format to interact with you, since meeting face-to-face in our offices isn't possible at the moment. And a final word of thanks to Bonnie for all her work coordinating tonight, and together with Emily, helping everyone prepare. Thank you both for your efforts, always enriching this team and the community. Next, we'll hear from Janet Hoffman from the Early Childhood Division.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see some of your faces, some familiar faces. I guess the one point I'm going to stress is don't be afraid to talk and discuss about the coronavirus, because truth be told, children have already heard about it, or they've seen people wearing masks. And even yesterday in early childhood, we heard different children mention it, snippets of conversation. Not talking about it makes them worry more. So according to Dr. Dominique at Child Mind Institute, you take on the news and you're the person who filters the news to your child. So like Jerry said, you are a role model in how to deal with stressful situations, and your children will follow your verbal and also your nonverbal cues. For the goal is we want children to feel informed, get fact-based information, but that's going to be reassuring on more than what they're hearing from friends and from the news. And you're going to be age appropriate. Certainly what you discuss with your 7th grader is not what you're going to be sharing with your 5-year-old. And you want to have these conversations sooner than later, because you want to be your child's trusted source of information, the primary source of information, and preferably not before bedtime. You want to begin by saying, what do you know? What do you know about what's going on? How are you feeling about the topic? And you want to engage in what we call active listening. You're going to let them lead the conversation. You want to hear what they're saying. And at the same time, you're going to notice some kind of emotional reactions, maybe physical reactions that might be related to some underlying anxieties, which is perfectly normal. They might not see the connection, but you might. You want to set a calm and reassuring tone, because for little children in particular, you want to keep it simple, factual. You want to focus on the positive, because you really want to build an appropriate perspective here for them. I'm going to turn it over to, I think, to Danielle.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Again, just as everybody said, it's really nice to see some of you and to see all of you rather. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Danielle Anda, the lower school psychologist. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about being reassuring with your kids. So one way to think about anxiety in general is the overestimation of the chance that something bad will happen and the underestimation of our coping abilities. Dr. Lisa D'Amour, a psychologist and columnist for the New York Times, recently applied that concept to the current situation. She said adults can help by making sure adolescents don't overestimate the dangers or underestimate their ability to protect themselves. So in that vein, we know right now that the virus seems milder in children, and that there are things that children and adults alike can do to lower their risk. So focusing on the practical things that you can do together to stay safe. So Dr. Jamie Howard, a psychologist at the Child Mind Institute, shared kids feel empowered when they know what to do to keep themselves safe. Since we know the virus is transmitted through coughing and touching surfaces, reminding kids that proper hygiene about proper hygiene is a practical thing that they can do to keep themselves safe. So in that vein, make hand washing fun. Sing ABCs or happy birthday, or even challenge your kids to come up with their favorite 20 seconds of a song and make that their own personal hand washing jam. Personally, mine is the chorus from Toto's Africa. Involve your kids in the process of preparing yourself and preparing your home, but make sure to monitor your own anxieties as well. Just as both Jerry and Janet said, you're their role model. And notably, not all news is reassuring news, and it's extremely important to not catastrophize. So to that point, I'm going to pass it over to Benti, who's going to talk a little bit about reactions.
Thanks, Danielle. Hi, it's really so great to see everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Benti Rabinovich. I'm the lower school and early childhood social worker. So I'm going to be talking about being prepared for all reactions. So some kids might react in a way maybe a little surprising. They'll be excited that there's no school. They're off from school for a while. They are excited and detached from all the scariness that we're so much in touch with. This is a totally normal response. But for other kids, they may express fears about themselves, others, grandparents, loved ones with health problems, etc. Validate their fears and concerns. That's so important. Anxiety is also a totally normal response. Kids can be worried. They can be worried that they're so worried, and that's also okay. Say to them, feeling some anxiety makes sense right now. This is normal, appropriate, it's an appropriate reaction, and letting them know that it is an appropriate reaction is a good idea. But you can gently offer facts to counter any misconceptions that they have, particularly on the level of risk, and explain where your information has come from. Give them sources. Don't make promises you can't keep or close the conversation. You want to keep those lines of communication open with them. You want them to feel like they can come to you with any of their fears or concerns. Let them know that they can ask more questions later at any time. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Emily.
Hey everyone, thank you, Benti. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Emily Ernstine. I'm the psychologist in the middle school. So I'm going to continue to talk about some of the things we've already touched upon and focus more on monitoring social media and the news. So I can imagine that everyone has been listening or watching to the news in some capacity. And as we all know, it is constantly changing and at such a rapid pace. But try to avoid watching or listening to information that might be upsetting when children are present, and try to avoid having the TV on in the background all day long with different headlines. I know we all want to stay up to date, but that can be an overload of information. And that constantly watching and getting new updates can be really anxiety provoking. Also speak to your children or your child about the stories on the internet and how there could be some misinformation and it could be inaccurate. For example, there are a lot of unreliable news sources. I know a lot of students get their information from TikTok, which is not what I would recommend they should be getting their information from. So talk to them about the news and provide accurate information, and try to encourage distractions away from the news. Actually, this is a time to think about screen time in a different way and having a new definition and thinking about how to be more pro-social. So think of other activities that kids could be doing away from screens, such as reading a book, but also using screens in a positive way, like watching a favorite TV show or comedy, or interacting with their friends via FaceTime, using certain apps to explore with music or art. Think about how to provide some structured time in a time that seems so unstructured and uncertain right now. And it's new for all of us, and you can reassure them that it's new for you too, and that we're actively thinking about how to have playtime together online. And so with that, I am going to pass it along to my colleague, Bonnie.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Altman. I'm the high school psychologist. I'm going to really be talking tonight about the positive aspect, the positive message in this, if there is any, which is to say that people are working really hard to protect children. And I think that message is often not actually conveyed to the children. It's important for kids to know that doctors are working and are here to help, that vaccines are being created and worked on, that their teachers are here working really hard for them and to be there for their academic development and their social and emotional growth And that message can't really be said enough because kids need to know they're in good hands, and they are. So it's really good news. I think it's good to share that. I've been so blown away by the dedication of the faculty. I get to see it a lot, and I think it's good to tell kids that. There's such a warm, loving, supportive community at Heschel, and I think that I want them to feel that, and to know that we're all here for them. In general, I think we have to just keep listening and keep talking. The situation is evolving so much and so different from day to day that what we think they understand and feel today might actually be different next week. We have to have lots of little conversations because checking in is important. And we have to take care of ourselves. So find time to take breaks, find time to take walks, try to get some sun if you can. Really taking care of yourself is really good because modeling healthy, good behavior is a great start. Ariella, I'm turning it back to you for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That was great. And thank you all for thinking through what to present and for doing this. So really our goal for the next 20, 30 minutes, 20 minutes maybe, is to take your questions. Please use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Choose me from the chat function because I'm the only one reading the chats, so that the whole mental health team can pay attention to what's going on. And send me your questions. I'll do my best to share them. I have one to start things off that's come through already, and hopefully more people will have questions while this group thinks about this one. So this comes from a high school parent, but I think it actually is applicable probably with different language across the board. And the question is about how to explain to our children why they really can't socialize the way they usually do at this time. People at this moment, I think, are making different decisions about how narrowly to limit social activity, but we're all making those decisions. And certainly large social gatherings have pretty clearly been advised against by the Department of Health. So what's the best language to use to explain to children of different ages why we're limiting social activity in these kinds of ways?
I would say that it's important to talk about it as a matter of protection and just safety. There's nothing wrong with other people. It's not the fear is often that when people hear that others are sick, that they turn on them or they don't want to be near them. You don't want to be near them for sure, but we don't have to treat people like lepers. We want to treat people like people, and we want to think of them that way. But we are doing what we can as precaution. We are trying to be thoughtful about what is most protective right now with the information that we have. I think that's really it. It's the same reason you can wash your hands, but you should wash your hands because you want to be careful and avoid the spread of germs.
Let me also just add that approaching it as factually as possible is going to be helpful in terms of how the disease is actually spread or shared, and that the preventative efforts that Bonnie makes reference, added to that is also the notion of wanting to protect others, protect ourselves, but it's important that others are protected also, and that our special hand washing helps do that.
At the same time, I just want to be a realist from the early childhood perspective. These children are accustomed to play dates. Mm-hmm. They have lots of after-school activities. They're busy. They have very busy lives. So I think it's important to validate that, yes, it's hard. It's hard, and I can understand that you're disappointed that you can't see your friends, but this is the rule right now. And if we emphasize, again, safety, and the grown-ups know what to do to keep you safe, I think that's an important strategy. It doesn't mean they're going to like it, and then you could problem solve with them. All right, let's brainstorm. What else could we do today? And get their ideas of what they can do during their downtime at home.
And actually, to Emily's point before, trying to use screens in a productive way, which is if you can FaceTime friends and you can have sort of these virtual play dates, well, obviously by no means the same thing, just the same way as everybody greeted everyone tonight saying it's nice to see everyone's smiling face, it really does bring cheer to see those people who mean a lot to you, even via phone.
And you should all know that our goals in running our remote school for the moment are really twofold. It's really important to us that children continue to learn, right? We're a school. It is also equally important to us that children have social connection. So we're really trying to design, I mean, we're only one day in, folks, so stick with us. But we are really trying to design programs, and there are obviously different challenges for 3-year-olds than 18-year-olds. We're trying to design programs mindful of both the learning, but also the deep need we all have for connection, and our unique ability as a school with time structured into our kids' day to serve some of that need. Okay, second question is about children, and I think this applies across the board. Children want answers. And so many of the questions they're asking right now, from when is this going to end to, you know, what's it going to look like in the next stage? There are a lot of unknowns. What is the most productive and supportive way to help children who want answers? And again, they could be 3 or 18 when we don't have the answers.
I think, as Bonnie had alluded to earlier, just keep having conversations with them. So it's not something you're going to have once and then be done with it. And I know it can be a little frustrating for us as well as for kids, but being open and honest that you are giving them the answers that you know, and that that's all you're able to provide right now. Sometimes showing them information, I know, and we're going to send out resources. There's been comics, and there's been stories, and there's different information that's appropriate for different developmental ages. But being open with them, but also trying to have them understand that there are just some things that right now we can't answer, and we'll have to wait and see.
I think it's good to validate the frustration and how unsettling it is not to know.
And that it's hard for us too, as grown-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's okay not to know, and that we can learn to live with some anxiety and some uncertainty, that all of us would like to know much more about things, but people are doing the best they can to find answers for everyone.
Thank you. Do you have thoughts about sort of helping kids and parents adjust to everybody being home together?
I think that one of the most important things that you can do, that I think that's part of what we're trying really hard to do as a virtual school, is create routines, right? Create a space that is your designated space for X, another space that is a designated space for Y. And so if a kid, for example, or you are working from home, and then it's time to have dinner or go to bed, change the space around, make it a very clear delineation between the end of the school day and home. Whatever you can do to sort of create structure and routine in separate spaces to help kids sort of be able to separate in the way and compartmentalize they do on a day-to-day basis can help sort of create some of that familiar structure.
I would add to that, respecting each other's space and boundaries is important. So when your children are at school, you're not talking to them all day or interrupting their classes, and their siblings aren't interrupting their classes. So if they are in a class, trying to respect their space, just as I'm guessing you'd want them to respect your space if you're working. And so having those conversations with them about boundaries, and I know it's difficult and this is a unique situation and everyone's learning, but I think that would help also create some structure during this time.
I also
that looks very different.
I'm sorry.
That looks very different for different age groups. So a high school student might need some more alone time and alone space, obviously, than a 3 or 4 year old. But even 3 and 4 year olds need some time without the same kind of constant supervision.
I wanted to offer another perspective that I got from my niece, who saw this as an opportunity. She has her 2 children at home. She's able to see them as learners, because typically we don't see our kids as learners. You know, they're in school doing these kind of functions all day long. She's able to regard and observe what they do and how they learn. She's able to have lunch with them. She's able to have a conversation with them. They're not tempted by all the after-school activities that I mentioned before. And then at night, they're able even able to watch some television together. I'm not in any way saying that this is an okay situation, but she was able to reframe it in a way that I hadn't actually seen. So I was grateful.
So that's a great transition to a couple of questions I've gotten about supporting our children as learners. So, right, normally it's the job of the Heschel School to support all of our students as learners, and the students who struggle with different aspects of our classroom structures, we help them. The students who struggle to integrate and participate, we help them at school. So there are sort of two pieces to this question, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of them. One is, how do we help our children who feel less comfortable participating on Zoom? Right there, and I've heard this from children just today. I like participating in class, but I feel kind of funny participating on Zoom. Or I like activities with my teachers at school, but I feel kind of funny doing this on the computer. How can we help our children become participants in a very different kind of learning environment? And what should we do if our children say, I don't want to be on that Zoom class. I don't want to go to school, remote school today. So how can you help us support our children if they're struggling with learning or school in a different way with these type of media?
So I think the first thing is just to have patience. It's brand new. So what's uncomfortable right now might not be uncomfortable tomorrow. That's just the first thing. It's going to take some time. But I would say if a child's really struggling in those ways, reach out to us. There are so many things we can do. For instance, we can meet them where they are. If they're not ready to join a full class, a full Zoom class, maybe we can have a phone conversation. Maybe we could do FaceTime, depending on their age and if they have a phone. We don't have to jump into the activity that is not comfortable. There are different ways we can meet them. So it begins with a conversation, I would say.
And can I just add one thing? I also recognize that not every parent is home at all during this time. So I think it's also useful to take this advice for parents of young children, someone presumably is home. For parents of medium and older children, they might not be. In which case, these are still good conversations to have and try to figure out. We are very, very mindful that closing school is tremendously burdensome on you. Please don't think we're not. So really, we want to share this advice in the spirit of sharing it with whoever is home with your young child, or how you debrief with your child when you get home. Other thoughts on what if they don't want to participate this way?
I can echo what Bonnie said, and I have to say we even had some students in the middle school self-advocate for themselves today, which is really wonderful. And we came up with some solutions that if they didn't feel comfortable with Zoom or using the video, that they were able to check in with their advisor separately, just to have that face-to-face interaction, but not have to be part of the whole class setting, and came up with a plan to help the individual students. So again, reach out, have your children reach out. If they don't feel comfortable, reach out to their advisor, the teachers, to myself, to all the psychology team, and we can work with your child to make them feel comfortable, just as we work with your children when we're in school to meet all different students' learning profiles. We'll do the same thing online.
Absolutely, and to the point of actually, depending on who's home with the child and who's, maybe being that child's voice, if they're struggling to have a voice. In the lower school, we spoke to the teachers today and shared with them that if they're noticing, say, for example, a kid who usually participates a lot and isn't participating now, or is just noticing a particular difficulty a child is having, to let us know. We'll get in contact with you, and we can try to figure out a plan to help your child.
How do we destigmatize the virus as children potentially start to know people who have this coronavirus that they've heard about? How do we bring down the stigma associated with it in a large community?
Could you say a little bit more about this kind of stigma that you're observing, you're seeing, you're hearing about?
Well, I didn't write this question myself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I will flesh it out in the way I've seen it. I think that I see this. I mean, I hear children talking about, oh, so-and-so got coronavirus. as though it's, you know, I think it's both a fear, but it's also, you know, it's like they got the cooties. These children are likely to know people who get coronavirus. And how do we sort of take the kind of shame factor away from it, right? This is the thing everyone's trying to avoid.
So sadly, I think it's going to become easier as people know more people who have it. That's not the good news. But I think I think really it begins with how we all talk about it and being mindful of how we speak about people who are sick and people in general. Modeling kindness and modeling compassion goes a really long way. Kids are so sensitive to those messages.
And modeling empathy.
Mm-hmm. And I think normalizing it, that now, unfortunately, as Bonnie's saying, we're seeing celebrities and NBA players. It is unfortunately spreading within our community, within our world. And also explaining some of the facts about it, that for most people, the symptoms are just a common cold or like the flu, which is something that most people have already experienced. And so trying to normalize what it actually looks like and that it isn't as scary as the word seems.
I also think helping them become more active in doing acts of chesed. So if you happen to know a family who's quarantined, or someone who needs just reaching out, like a phone call, an elderly relative, and they can't go visit that person, but they should be reaching out to make a phone call or to helping buying some food and then delivering it, even if they're dropping it off at the doors, you know, at their door, it takes them out of themselves and they're thinking about the other.
Thank you, and that's very helpful. We got a question about how to sort of help children think about not being able to be with elderly people right now who they might normally be with. And I think those are wonderful, helpful ideas. Can we talk a little about anger and loss? I think a lot of children are feeling quite angry about some of the things that this is imposing on their lives. And likewise, a lot of children are having to miss special events that they have been looking forward to for a long time, whether it's a bar or bat mitzvah of their own or of a relative or of a friend, whether it's our 8th grade Israel trip, which we will hope to postpone. But at the moment, what the children know, because Lori and Rabbi Jack beautifully met with them right before we dismissed school, is that they're not going when they were planning to be going. So how can we talk to children about both the anger they're feeling about the state of the world and what it's doing to their lives, and sort of relatedly, the loss they feel at not being able to do special things, events, simchas, trips that they've been anticipating?
I think a large part of this, again, is that validation piece and reflecting on yourself, right? And acknowledging that it is an extremely normal reaction, and that you might also be feeling frustrated and angry too. And it's normal to feel frustrated and angry at things we can't control. And trying to find in our lives the things that, you know, reminding ourselves of coping skills and times where we've gotten through difficult things before, and knowing that there is eventually, we don't quite know yet when, but there will be an end and a return to normalcy. But I think it's in these moments, it's really okay to say, I'm having a hard time too. This isn't easy. What can we do together?
Mm-hmm. Just giving time for other thoughts before I move on.
I guess I would just add that I think the only bad thing to say would be you're upset about a party and people are really getting sick. I mean, like the invalidation of it is really unfair and unkind, because these things really do matter to kids, and it is a loss. It's like mourning a loss.
And it should be said, it shouldn't be left unsaid, that, you know, we can't tell kids how to feel. We can't tell kids not to be angry. Everybody has mentioned validating those experiences of kids, and that's got to be, listening has to be the starting point.
Can you say a little bit about how to talk to children about computer and internet use during this complicated time where we're asking them to probably be on screens more than this team would normally recommend they be on screens, and yet for their work, and yet probably don't want to give them, except for maybe our oldest students, where I still might not want to give it to them, but it's more of a challenge, not give them free access to all internet and all technology. So could you maybe talk a little bit about, again, some language we might use to explain some of this?
I think you're right, and that's something that we've been thinking about and talking about a lot. I think trying to think of a positive reframe, it's pretty amazing to see how all the positive ways we can use the internet and how to be pro-social with it and how to learn together online. And so trying to emphasize that while we're using our screens, we're doing so to be positive and active and foster learning and foster community and foster engagement in different types of way that we're not used to. And also because of that, we need to still take breaks in between those times of learning. At the end of the day, maybe not trying to use it as much in the evening because you are on it all day long. And I think, you know, it looks different in each division, but we are trying to think about how to be mindful with that and schedule some breaks in between classes or give some time so that they're not constantly looking at the screen. And I know that's a challenge though.
But I think it's worthy of a conversation that we have with our children. You know, it's not something we can decide. And certainly with older kids, we have to sit down and say, look, these are different times. This is very difficult. You're doing a lot of learning, online learning all day long. Let's think what would be a good ratio of time that you'll be off the screen, and we can have some more family time or come up with an alternative activity. But it is a temptation, especially if that's the way they're going to be connected with their friends.
I would add also, I think teachers spoke about this, at least in the middle school, about some rules, is that if we're during the school day, we'd want to have the same rules. So
Did Emily just freeze for other people?
You froze.
Yes.
Emily, I think you're frozen.
because we also don't want to overload. And so I think that's a conversation to be had with your children.
Emily, could you just repeat your last thought? You froze a little bit for at least most of us.
I don't know what the last part was. I was just going to say we want to try to minimize using too many screens at one time. So the same rules would be how that we have during the school day. So not using your phone while using your computer during class and having the TV on in the background or having music on in the background. And so I think that's an important conversation to have with your children about setting those boundaries and those rules at home, just like we would have those rules at school, because it's obviously harder for us to manage it. But that's one way, even if we're using screens all day, we can still try to limit the screen time or the screen exposure.
Last question for the team, and then I'm just going to name a few questions that I got that I will sort of give brief responses to and flag for future conversations. The question is about routines. Obviously, our children are used, and again, I think this applies to our 3-year-olds all through our high school students. Our children are used to having a routine. Getting to school, what they do at school, coming home from school, after schools. How can we help them adjust to a quick transition to daily life without those routines?
With different routines, we're developing different routines, and that's definitely being modeled at home. I can't imagine that the daily life of a parent of a school child is unchanged throughout this. So kind of narrating those changes and sharing that experience is going to be helpful, will be important.
Yeah. And I think also relating it even to a change from school to camp, for example, right? So your school day is different than your camp day, and the first few days take some getting used to. Maybe even the first few weeks take some getting used to, but then you kind of fall into your new routine. So I think helping kids understand that while this is a unique experience, this whole thing is a unique experience, there are some elements of it that they might have experienced in the past, and kind of relating it that way.
Thank you. So there were a couple of questions about things like high school grades, school requirements. I assure you, let me just say this, we don't have clear answers to those questions yet. You know, as I said, I too am someone who likes clear answers, and I too am living in a world of some unknowns right now. Here's what I can guarantee to you. We are going to work super hard to make sure that this does not negatively impact any child's school record. You have my commitment to that. You have our division heads' commitments to that. That's going to look very different, obviously, in each division. But please rest assured that that is something the entire Heschel School is committed to. We're going to find ways to make sure that transcripts are okay, that grades are okay, that we're not adding stress to your children's lives through worrying about the things that actually right now we can reassure you we're going to take care of. So I wanted to just name that. The other question I got, thankfully, is about transitioning back to school. We will do lots of work, this team and the whole admin team and all the teachers, when, God willing, we are able to transition back to school, and I'm confident we will get there. I can't share those plans with you yet because we don't have them yet, but please, again, know we will joyously, safely, and carefully transition back to school with lots of thought in developmentally different ways for different students when that time comes. And we will look forward to celebrating that day with you. These are all questions that schools around the country and really around the world are asking. I just want to let you know that I am in touch regularly with many, many heads of the New York schools. They are a remarkable, the Jewish day schools and the independent schools, they are a remarkable, supportive, collaborative, wonderful community. We are all working together to make sure that all of our children are as supported as possible and that this does not negatively impact them going forward. I think with that, I will say thank you. Thank you for making the time to be with us. Thank you for your support. Thank you for bringing your smiling faces onto my computer screen. Please, I really think the point that was made about teachers and reaching out is key. We're still your school. Just like you can be in touch with your children's teachers, division heads, deans, me, anytime when they're in school every day, you can be in touch with all of us now. We want to support the children one by one. We want to support you. You are, as always, our partners, and you continue to be, even though communication is going to look a little bit different. Phones, computers, Zoom, keep your questions coming. Keep your desires for other conversations like this. Let me know. We are very grateful for all feedback, and we will try to be responsive in any way that we can. Thank you all for making the time tonight. Stay safe, keep smiling, stay healthy, get rest, and as I said, be kind. Thank you. Have a good night.
Right.
Thank you to the amazing mental health team and to Donnie Farkowitz for making sure we can all communicate this way.